E tangi wairua nā te hui a kai manawa wai hoa no ia kia rahia na hui ara. Tangi rore ka nā te tū I te kōko wai hoa no ia kia kete ana tū ia ki runga ki raro E tangi ana te pipi wharauroa wai hoa no kia kui, whiti ora E tangi ana te kawe a wai hoa no kia tangi kia kōrihi ki aro ki te mahana taka mai te āhuru ti hei mauri ora taku Rauhuia
Tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai ki tēnei piringa Rauhuia ki tēnei huinga kōrero. Kia Tīparetia ki te Rauhuia. Stepping into leadership. Ko Roseanne London tōko ingoa, he kaia kua hau, ko Aotearoa o ngā tohu mātua mō te matatu Aotearoa. My name is Roseanne London. I am a teacher and I'm one of the senior advisors at the Teaching Council, working in our Relationship and Pathways team. It is fantastic that you are here for the launch of Stepping into Leadership. Today marks the beginning of an exciting journey for all of you ready to step into leadership roles in education. This launch is especially exciting and significant as it is the very first time we're introducing this resource to the teaching community. We're thrilled that you've joined us to be part of this very special moment. When we talk about stepping into leadership, it's important to acknowledge the strong connection that this resource has with the Teaching Council and the Rauhuia leadership space. At the heart of this work is the Rauhuia Leadership Strategy, which sets out a powerful vision for leadership in education across Aotearoa, New Zealand. It aspires to enable every teacher, no matter their role or setting, to develop their leadership capability. It supports leadership that is culturally capable, deeply connected, and committed to equity and excellence. Rauhuia also reminds us that leadership isn't about holding a position. It's about making a positive difference in education. It's about the influence we have in our schools, our communities, and most importantly, with our learners. It calls us to embrace leadership, leading alongside others rather than in isolation. The Stepping into Leadership resource reflects these aspirations. It equips educators with practical strategies and leadership mindsets tailored to the unique contexts we each work in. It honours Te Ao Māori perspectives, Pacific models of leadership, and the relational ways of working that are at the heart of the education system. This webinar is not just a launch event, it is your first step towards building leadership skills grounded in Aotearoa's unique educational landscape. By the end of this session, you'll have a clear understanding of the incredible free learning opportunities available for stepping into leadership. Before we move on to the discussion, I've just got a few quick housekeeping notes. So please make sure your microphone is muted to avoid any background noise. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to post them into the chat and we'll address as many as we can during the Q&A towards the end of the session. This session will be recorded and we'll be sharing the recording with you after the webinar. To get access to the sign language interpreters, please press the 3 dots on the bottom panel, Interpretation and then NZSL. Then a box with the interpreter in it will pop up on your screen. Lastly, During the session, we'll be emailing you login details for the Stepping into Leadership modules. This means you'll have everything you need to get started on the modules at the time that works best for you. Now, let's dive in. Stepping into Leadership is a flexible, self-paced, practical learning program designed specifically for New Zealand teachers who are ready to lead. Whether you're already taking on leadership roles or considering the path, this course will provide the tools and insights to help you lead with confidence. But what makes this course stand out? It is fully funded by the New Zealand Government, completely free for New Zealand certificated teachers. It is self-paced, so you can learn when and where suits you best. There are no assignments, just 12 hours of practical, actionable learning. And the course is uniquely Aotearoa New Zealand focus, grounded in both Te Ao Māori and Pacific perspectives. It draws insights from top New Zealand education experts. I'm excited to introduce to you the authors who have contributed their expertise to this course. Each of them brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, and they've dedicated their careers to empowering teachers and educational leaders across Aotearoa. I'll be inviting each of them to give a brief introduction and speak to the value they see in this program and what they believe it offers to those stepping into leadership. First up, we have Whare Isaac Sharland, a Mātauranga and kaupapa Māori specialist and education consultant. Whare, could you please introduce yourself and talk to how the name came to being? And if we have time, can you share what you believe is a key strength or the unique value of this program from your perspective?
Tēnā koe, Roseanne. Ka rere tonu ngā tai o mihi ki tērā waka i whakarau i ka mai ki tēnei hui topa. Ai mihi kauatu ki a koutou e nā ka pīkau, ka hāpa i tēnei haipapa, e mihi ana. Ko Whare Isaac Sharland taku ingo he uri tēnei o Ngāti Kahungunu ki te Wairoa rā te ko tauranga moana ko Ngāti Manawa e mihi kauatu tēnā noho ki tātou. Thank you for that question, Roseanne. I think it's really important in terms of the value add that understanding the whakapapa of kia Tīparetia te Rauhuia, stepping into leadership. When we were brought on board to be one of the writers for this project, I quickly had to get myself enabled to understand what the Te Matatu or the Teaching Council had done previously, and it was a beautiful journey. I think if you haven't done that already, perhaps that's a good starting place for you who is undertaking this Emerging Leaders resource, taonga. So the whakapapa of this taonga, kia Tīparetia te Rauhuia, was powered by existing Te Matatu taonga, which in turn strengthened the overall approach by embedding Te Matatu-centric ways of knowing and being. The following three key taonga also play a role in the naming of kia Tīparetia te Rauhuia, or stepping into leadership, which I believe is an important element to further grow understanding as you progress through the course. These were the Rauhuia karakia. We were really lucky today to hear Roseanne open our launch with that particular karakia. It was gifted to Te Matatu by Taranaki Whānui Te Aotearoa, and currently, I'm to understand, hangs on the wall at the offices of the Teaching Council or Te Matatu. Also, we were very lucky to have had access to this particular karakia and grow understanding about its connection to the Teaching Council. And so that was one of our first taonga that we looked at when we started to progress this name. The Rauhuia in and of itself, for those that are not aware, is a huia feather in traditional Māori society. It was a taonga or treasure used to represent a rangatira or someone of great mana, influence or power. It was generally only worn by rangatira or someone of high status, regardless of whether they were male or female. The Rauhuia was also used for ornamental purposes as a sign for a person of great significance. As we crafted the name for this taonga, we kept these understandings front and centre in our minds and in our hearts. And so that was the first step that we undertook, was to have a look at that karakia. The second was when I was sent a lot of rauimi or resources or taonga to have a look at so that we could start to craft our own writing journey in this process. E ngā tukutuku o te whare matatu, o te pātū o te whare, the wall of identity played a significant role for us. Through the use of tukutuku and what each panel represents, it is reflective of the interwoven nature of cultural diversity. The 4 panels represent mana whenua, tangata whenua. The second panel, biculturalism. The next one is tangata ole moana. And lastly, multiculturalism, which we believe further highlights the weaving together of the diverse cultural landscape within current day schools and kura throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand. The last taonga that we drew heavily on, although I'm going to leave most of the explanation of this for Emily, was the perhaps was the Rauhuia leadership space, which can be found on the Teaching Council Te Matatu website. Everything related to leadership for Te Matatu can be found in this space online. This in turn supported our understanding about the connection of the Rauhuia and leadership. However, all of these taonga together led us to the name Kia Tīparetia te Rauhuia. It is an amalgamation of understandings which draw upon existing Te Matatu taonga. Through the importance and relevance associated to the Rauhuia and the connection to the wall of identity, which further weaves together and reflects upon the diverse nature of Aotearoa. In addition, the tīpare is a traditionally woven headpiece, which interrelates to the metaphorical elements present within the 3 taonga. Kia tīparetia ki te Rauhuia is really about weaving your way to leadership, and it has been a pleasure to work alongside these 3 lovely writers. Tēnā noho ki tātou.
Thank you, Whare. Now, I'd like to welcome Dr. Janice Carroll Lind, an education consultant. Janice, could you please introduce yourself and share with us what you see as the value in this program?
Thanks, Roseanne. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Taranaki te maunga, ko te henui te awa, ko Carol te ingoa o te whānau, ko ngā moto te tūranga waiwai NRA kei kapiti toku kainga in INA. Ko Janice Carroll Lind toku ingoa, he tangata turiti aho, he kaikiri mana mā tauranga o. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora. Throughout my long teaching career, I've worked in a range of positions and locations and across all sectors, from early childhood, primary through to tertiary education. Our full author bios are in the introductory module for you to watch. So I just want to say here and now that I feel very privileged with the opportunities I've been given over the years to enhance the leadership capability of teachers. What do I think about our Stepping into Leadership program? Well, they say 2 heads are better than 1, and in our case, it's been 4 heads, each of us bringing our own worldviews and differing leadership experiences and knowledge to the writing of these modules. I really like that the content is pitched at aspiring and emerging teacher leaders rather than positional leaders. Of course, the principles and practices of educational leadership are of relevance to all leaders, but first and foremost, this course has been developed for those dipping their toes into leadership for the first time, and it has a particular focus on equipping aspiring school and ECE teacher leaders with those essential leadership skills and knowledge to become future leaders. I really wish I had something like this when first starting out on my own leadership journey, but like so many teachers, I received my leadership training on the job, so to speak. For me, back in the day, it really was a matter of sink or swim and fake it until I make it. And I know that this has been the case for many teachers, not just me. Thankfully, I think this program goes a long way towards addressing that gap by providing early support for teacher leaders and preventing that sense of isolation by developing a leadership community of practice. And worth emphasising, I think, is the realness of this program. It isn't corporate leadership theory. It's based in whanaungatanga and lived experience.
Thank you, Janice. Next, we're joined by Dr. Emily Nelson, an education consultant. Emily, it's lovely to have you here with us today. Please introduce yourself and let us know what stands out to you about this program. What do you think makes it especially valuable for educators stepping into leadership?
Kia ora. Thank you, Roseanne. Tēnā koutou katoa, ka mihi nui ki a koutou. Kei te mihi atu ki te maunga te waka, kei te mihi atu ki te awa o moko o tuararo, kei o no Bangor no Riverton ahau, kei te mātou a Maui e noho ana, he kaiakoa hau, he tangata tiriti ahau, ko Emily Nelson tōku ingoa. Thank you for the opportunity. Like Janice, I have been around in education for a while now, since starting out as a primary teacher at Pasadena Intermediate back in 1989. So, you know, that dates me. So fast forward 36 years and I am just starting out as an education consultant after 12 years in initial education, teacher education, and kind of picking up on what Janice said, a lot of my role was around leading initiatives that never seemed to have a definite start or end point. So you were always in the middle of something when you needed to take on something else and always needing to teach as well. And that for me, I've brought into this program because we often don't get that opportunity to stop, clear the decks and start leading and plan it in advance. So I think that stepping into leadership has got some really amazing resources for just picking up one or two things to try, but also when you have got some time, diving in and learning more deeply about a particular model or framework or approach. So having moved out of initial teacher education and having spent quite a long time also as a professional development facilitator, I can really see the benefit of stepping into leadership, not only for emerging leaders, but for any leaders. I know that, and we've talked about this as the four wahine that have worked together. There's something for everyone in this. It's free, and that's not like a steak knives advertisement. It's actually the Teaching Council giving to the profession, which I think is incredible. I think it shows commitment to developing the teaching profession, which I think we really need at the moment. Because, you know, it's a gift, it's a taonga. I would like to say that we've designed it, like I said, to be reasonably practical, but also enabling people to go deep. But also not only for the now, but if you complete all the reflective exercises, by the time you finish stepping into leadership, you will have a nice body of evidence to take into your next appraisal or as a professional growth cycle, or potentially to advance your career and promotion as well. Kia ora.
Thank you, Emily. And just a reminder that this program is government funded. Finally, we're really fortunate to have Vasa Fia Collins, Diversity and Inclusion Specialist, with us today. Fia, welcome. Please introduce yourself and tell us from your lens what you think this program offers that supports inclusive, impactful leadership in today's diverse educational landscape.
Ko whaatai lava mo le awa noa, o le vi inga le tama ma le alo ma le anganga pa ia, e pei o le vi inga sa le amatanga whaapea fo'i ona pō nei, ma aso uma, i le whaavavau lava, amene. O le vi inga lava leo le atua, e le whaititia, a wā ana le se anoa lona alofa ma lona angalei, i ona o se foe whaae e le tau, a e tawhea le awau. Talofa lava o lo ingoa, o Vasa, vai o le to'oto o tuilangi, Fia Collins. O te sau mai le nuu o manono, pua, whatausi safo tula whai. Talofa everyone, it's wonderful to join our webinar tonight. I'm really honoured and humbled to be a co-author for our Stepping into Leadership modules. For me, there was great beauty in being able to share this space with these three wahine toa. We all have different perspectives, different worldviews, and different ideas and approaches to leadership. But what was beautiful was we were also able to celebrate and identify the things that we had in common. And that is what I think came across in the writing, and that's what came across in the collaboration. I find that a lot of people stepping into leadership, they're masters at their craft. And what I mean by that is they are good at teaching, and they've gone and studied and they've got a qualification for it. And one of the toughest things about leadership is as you get promoted, you're doing less of that very craft that you studied for years and years to get to, and you're now in charge or leading a group of people. So leading people and being a maths teacher or specialist in history, those are not the same thing. And so I think that there's a gap in a lot of the leadership programs right across the country in all sectors, where we're promoting people and we're not giving them the tools to be great in leadership. And so the truth is we need training. All of us do. We need to be trained. We need to humble ourselves and admit that we got to become students of leadership. And so one of the best things about stepping into leadership for me is bringing these diverse views, and how wonderful that we're all women. For me, I celebrate that. I think it's wonderful that we're women and we're bringing those skills into the narrative, into the way we formed and design and even deliver this particular module. So you're going to get a lot of everything. And I think that there's so much to choose from right across the modules. So you don't have to worry about being bored. A lot of the content, you get to move at your own pace, and because at one stage or another, all of us had really rich talanoa about, feeling like imposters at one stage when we were stepping into leadership ourselves. We were able to say, well, how might some people feel coming into leadership now? How can we make sure that they have that wraparound support? And so we've really tried to pull from our own lived experiences of feeling scared, of stepping into leadership for the first time. And yeah, this has been a real labor of love. And I'm not going to lie, the biggest enjoyment for me came from being able to co-write with these beautiful women, if you didn't know that already. So thank you very much for the warm invitation and making the space more whana for me to enter into today. Thanks, team. Thanks, Rose.
Thank you, Fia. And thank you to all our authors. We really appreciate the time you have taken to join us today. Kia Tīparetia ki te Rauhuia is a tonga that carries deep intention and purpose. Before we dive into the practical aspects of the resource, we'd love to hear a bit about its whakapapa. Whare, can you share with us the story of how this tonga came to be, what shaped its development, and how existing kaupapa and leadership strategies have informed its creation?
I think I did a little bit of that previously, but what I will do is talk about its overall connection to the course. So not just the whakapapa was part of the naming, but also as we wove ourselves through the writing, and as Fia said, we had many wānanga or talanoa to sit down and actually work out aspects that we felt were really relevant, really contemporary issues that our emerging leaders will come across. For me, one of the biggest things in terms of kia tīparetia te Rauhuia is as we walk towards leadership, we have to be very, very mindful of our mauri, of our ora, of our well-being. And so as you progress through, the way the course has been designed, and again, everything about this course relates back to kia tīparetia te Rauhuia. As I said, you're basically weaving your way into leadership, and it provides you with either beginning examples or deep thought solutions to problems you might even know that you're going to come across yet. But they will, in this course, you can guide yourself through that. You can pick and choose what you want to look at. You can do what I would do is go through it, but in its structured order, because that's how my brain works. But at the end of the day, what we're really trying to provide you is, for me, most importantly for me, is a holistic way to grow your understanding of emerging leadership. One of the biggest things that I found when I was walking into emerging leadership is that I was really lucky that I had quite a few known leaders around me. And so all the mentorship and coaching that I was getting was intentional on their behalf to me, to ensure that I stepped into leadership more confidently. And as we were bringing the content together, we were all kind of talking about that for us as being almost misplaced, that there isn't really a space. Fia's already alluded to it, but particularly for our emerging leaders in education who are teachers in kaiawhina, there really isn't yet a space that they can go to and really grow their leadership journey in a holistic manner. And so I think that for me, when we look at kia tīparetia te Rauhuia again, and we talk about the interweaving of our understanding to grow our leadership, I think for me, and the overall perception of the course is that it's been done in a really holistic way so that you get these understandings. You can do deep dives, as Emily has said, or you can do small chunks. And it's going to help towards not only your leadership. I mean, we've all alluded to the fact that it will help towards your personal growth cycle. It will help towards you when you start to look at what is the next steps for you. It will provide you with some basis for you to really be able to stretch yourselves in your leadership goals, because the thing about leadership is it's never ending. You think you know some stuff, and then you have others come in front of you, and then you learn more stuff. And that's part for me of kia tīparetia te Rauhuia. When you finish this course or this taonga, when you've gone through it and you've got, okay, yeah, I think I'm good now, what you'll find is that you will still go away and be building and weaving your journey into leadership. So that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about this whole process that we've been through.
Thank you, Whiri. Could you also take us through the structure of the program?
So there are 4, I wish I had the presentation so I could, really nail it in for you. But there are 4 overall areas, and each area provides different steps of leadership that you can kind of walk into on the journey as you progress. What this has meant for me, as I in the back end of this sort of stuff, I do also design courses. So as I went through bit by bit, what we have actually created, and it was intentional, like we didn't just fall upon it and then went back and said, oh, this is great. We actually did acknowledge a lot of this is based on our own experiences, I guess, of what we thought we needed, what we needed in terms of pedagogical understanding that's contemporary right now, what we need in terms of deep embedded practices that lead towards success. As we crafted our content and grew understanding about each part of those 4 particular leadership sections that you're going to walk through, we realized that intentionally, because we're quite on the same page, although from all of us different lenses at each time, we believe that this added in more inclusiveness in terms of what you're going to find as you journey through the 4 layers of it. And kind of how we kind of saw it was, yes, there are going to be whakatauki that we think, or whakatauaki that we think will definitely support as you walk through that journey. But there's also going to be areas where Fia has added in some of her beautiful va'a understandings. Even to that point, just I'll briefly mention this, is that many of you will know that Māori have spent the great part of the last 20 to 30 years revitalising our traditions. So for me, it made no sense that we led out on that. And I remember asking Fia if she would lead out on that, because they still live that way, and we're still revitalizing those knowledges for ourselves. So that's just an example of that in terms of the underneath structure.
Thank you, Whare. Emily, you've been deeply involved in shaping Stepping into Leadership, and I know this mahi is close to your heart. Could you share with us why this resource matters so much to you personally? What inspired your passion for this work, and how have the voices of emerging and experienced leaders, as well as the kaupapa of Rauhuia, helped shape your vision for it?
You're right, it has become a passion. And I think the thing that I want to make 2 points really. The first one is around the needs analysis that we did. I mean, needs analysis sounds like really formal, but it meant having lots of cups of coffee with different people to find out their views. So to make sure that we designed a program or a resource that was actually going to do quite a wide variety of jobs, you know, across sectors, Māori, tangata o le moana. We spoke to a lot of our friends and a lot of people. So this resource is really grounded in the experience that young leaders told us that they needed, and that senior leaders told us that they spent a lot of time with more emerging leaders working on. You know, and I imagine that some of those people are in the audience this afternoon. And I don't think that Stepping into Leadership would be what it is without the informal conversations that all 4 authors had and brought back together. So, you know, your class is looking after the sports shed, and people are just chucking the gear back at, you know, that might seem like something that a teacher has to deal with all the time if they have responsibility for PE. But it's also an opportunity to show leadership. So we were really thinking, like, how can we lead in schools and in early learning settings in a way that's really going to connect with the day-to-day lives of teachers and akonga. So I'm really proud about that, and I'm really passionate about that, and I'd really love to know more as well. The second part that I'm really passionate about is what Whare's mentioned, and that is the Rauhuia leadership space on the Teaching Council's website. We really wanted our resource to grow out of that resource. And for me personally, there's an amazing video with Tamahau Rau and Leslie Hoskin talking about the Rauhuia narrative. And being tangata tiriti and non-Māori, I don't bring a whakaaro Māori idea around Rauhuia to this work. So I've watched that video so many times, and I've taken notes. And from that, we identified the key messages. And I was a little bit worried because you kind of said them all at the start, Roseanne. But you know, we used those in our design work to make sure that if we grabbed a model that we were interested in that maybe came from the US or from somewhere else, how did it contribute to the ideas such as every teacher can lead? What does that look like when you're wanting to develop people's leadership from the perspective of thinking about them already as a leader, and that everyone can belong, and that leadership is a process of sharing mana to create ako, and how can the environment guide us and shape us, and what does it mean to move beyond like a one-size-fits-all approach to leadership, and know that where you lead matters, because the mana whenua, the pūrākau, the stories, the landscape will influence your leadership in different ways. So I found that the commitment that I gained through the existing Teaching Council Rauhuia resources really helped our design work, as well as the leadership capability framework. that was also informed by on the shoulders of giants from two rangatira, so in terms of the roles that leaders play and bring to their work. So I think I'm passionate too, because it's I think we've worked on this over a number of months now, and it's like being in an intense leadership course. So yeah, but mostly the Teaching Council, what they've already committed to through the Rauhuia narrative, and where the Rauhuia narrative comes from and through in Te Ao Māori.
Thank you, Emily. Stepping into leadership takes a holistic and values-driven approach to leadership, one that supports teachers to grow both personally and professionally. From developing self-awareness and relational skills to navigating change and leading pedagogy, there's so much depth built into each module. Janice, could you share with us a bit more about how stepping into leadership supports teachers to bring their authentic selves to leadership, and why that balance of being and doing is so important in the learning journey?
Okay. Well, first of all, to know others and to lead others, you have to first know yourself. And I think our module 1, Understanding Self to Lead, provides the perfect scaffold into leadership. Its focus is on the being of leadership as well as on the doing, and it highlights the importance of bringing the authentic self into the workplace so that you learn how to pay more attention to who you are in order to balance it with the doing part of your leadership role. And this module, I think, certainly raises your self-awareness, because it helps you to get really honest with yourself as you learn to recognize the core values that guide you. Example, core and flex, head, heart, hand, and embodied leadership models, just to name a few. And I think Fia is going to elaborate on the core flex model in relation to cultural intelligence later. I hope I haven't dropped you in there, Fia.
Thank you, Janice. Stepping into leadership has been shaped by rich collaboration and deep cultural wisdom, especially through contributions of tanga ole moana and co-creation of tukutuku within Matatu Aotearoa. Fia, can you speak to how these specific worldviews, values, and pedagogies help shape the leadership modules, and why this culturally responsive, inclusive approach is so important in today's educational landscape?
Sure, thanks, Rose. One of the things that I think is important to understand and to recognize and identify is that racial bias is real in our education system. And the reason I really appreciated the co-authors and our collaborative approach to this work was we didn't shy away from really difficult and uncomfortable topics. And so in order for us to be honest about raising great leaders through these modules, we had to tackle and address some topics around bias. And so if you look at the data, it tells us that Māori and Pacific are still being underserved in our education system, and that their educational outcomes are not where they should be. And so we needed to turn our attention to make sure that these modules highlighted, reflected, and celebrated the cultural capital of Māori and Pacific learners, families, and communities. And so one of the things I'm really, really proud of is that I was able to be a part of the creation of the narrative. And I came in the back end. I can't take credit, full credit for this, but the tangata o le moana staff at Matatu Aotearoa were able to develop and create their own tukutuku, their own panel for the wall of identity. And a lot of love and a lot of thought went into creating these patterns and these motifs. And I just wanted to say it wasn't a tick box activity. I got a chance to really see how it was developed by the staff. And so we've woven their patterns and their motifs into the modules, and we've been able to see the fruits of their labor. And you'll see that they've got like a tiare or a frangipani. They've been able to celebrate the whenua and the land through that particular motif. They also have another pattern of the sea that represents our wayfinding and seafaring history as master navigators of the Pacific Ocean. And through that particular motif too, we're able to weave in our stories with tangata whenua, and to also highlight and celebrate the very special nature and relationship we have with Māori. And that is a connection that's dear to us as tangata o le moana, and one that we're very wary of, and that we hold in high esteem. Another motif was the lalanga, or the weaving, and again you'll see mats and this weaving or lalanga practice all the way across the Pacific region and every Pacific island. We've got another one that's centered off of the manulua, two birds, and you'll know that as master navigators of the sea, we studied birds, and a lot of the designs for our boats were the sails mimic the tails of birds. And so we studied birds quite a bit, and it's significant for that reason. Another motif is the tānoa, or the kumete for the kava or the ava ceremony. And then we've got another motif that highlights the whetū, or stars. Again, going back to our wayfinding techniques, where we used to navigate the stars to get from one island to another. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that great leaders are culturally responsive, culturally capable, and culturally intelligent. And you don't have to know everything about every culture in the world, but being culturally intelligent means that you're able to respond in a humble way, irrespective of what space you lead, and who's in there and how many different ethnicities there are. So I think that it's really poignant that we were able to touch on bias, that we were also able to touch on core and flex, and understanding that the core that we have, as Janice said, is really important to understand for ourselves, but also acknowledge that our core and our flex is not the same as everybody else's. And so how do you go from being the driver in the car and relinquishing the steering wheel or the power of driving and saying, you know what, I'm going to sit in the back seat, or I'm going to sit in the passenger seat, and I'm going to let somebody else drive for this segment or for this part. We're moving away from the old school traditional heroic style of leadership where there was one person speaking at the front, one voice, one person. And we're moving into a space where we're open to different voices, different people, different gender, different backgrounds. And we're being genuinely inclusive of those voices and celebrating the cultural capital of everybody. Whakatailawa.
Thank you, Fia. And thank you to all our authors for that insightful discussion. Now, I'm really keen to turn it over to our audience, and we've had a question come through in the chat, but if anyone in our audience has any questions or want to know more about any aspect of stepping into leadership, please pop your question into the chat and we'll try to answer as many of them as possible in the time that we have available. So the first question that's coming through is people are wanting to know a bit more about the learning areas or the modules covered in the course, and what they consist of. So I'm going to open up the floor to one of our authors to speak up and share about what the topics of the modules are.
Well, I can kick off. So leadership is relational, and all teachers can embrace and embody leadership if they're equipped with the necessary communication and relational skills. So we know that while teachers feel confident to lead children's learning, they're sometimes not as confident to lead adults leading, and especially not their peers. So we've made sure that in Module 2, the Leading Others module, that it provides practical strategies on mastering constructive communication skills that help to build collaborative relationships with colleagues and empowering others and fostering trusting relationships within your team, excuse me, is a big part of this course. And it's also fair to say that leading change does not always go smoothly, and nobody can control changes because they're uncertain. And it's when you're leading a change initiative for the first time, that uncertainty can be scary. So Module 3 on leading change supports you with strategies for developing resilience, self-trust, and being clear what your purpose is when leading out a change initiative. Learning to navigate transitions, manage resistance, that's a big one, and developing a strong culture of trust and collaboration will help you to become both confident and competent when stepping into that leadership space, and enabling you to become transformative leaders and agents of change, which is what Module 3 is about. Module 4, your role as a pedagogical leader is to promote the improvement of teaching and learning. And so Module 4 in particular focuses on leading culturally responsive and inclusive teaching practices that support student learning and achievement. That's really important. So in Module 4, you'll also learn about leading dialogic conversations about pedagogical change or pedagogical issues. And I think that's really helpful for that module too. Does anyone want to add, team?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I was just thinking that it might be opportune, because I've seen a few people say, you know, how do you go about it? Will it take you a month? That sort of thing. So we've got 4 modules, and each module has 3 sessions, except for the introduction. There was so much we wanted to add in that we've made the introduction separate. So each session starts off with the whakatauki or whakatauaki that relates to the focus of what's in there, if it's around understanding self to lead or leading others. And then there's quite a range of balance between some readings that you don't have to read. We've pretty much will tell you the main key points. So there's some content. There might be a few readings that you might like to read as well, but then we'll also encourage you to engage in some reflective activities. We've really talked to each other about making reflective activities varied in terms of learning preferences, and because we had this idea that people would keep a reflective journal as they went through the 4 modules, but it's up to you what that reflective journal looks like. So like one of Fia's favourites is to have coffee and talanoa with someone about this issue, like we've talked about. Take a senior leader on, do duty alongside them and ask them some questions about various things. And then there's maybe you want to do some drawings that indicate your how you feel like you've grown in your leadership journey so far. And then I've put my old thinking skills hat on and used a few things like forced association or you know, other things that I'm going to blank on now. So each each of the 4 modules goes through that same structure. We have 2 features. One that if you get to the end of the content and you think, oh, I just really want to go deeper on that, well, we've got this section called Going Deeper. And we've suggested to you what that might look like. And then another feature that we have is Tools for the Kete, and those are practical strategies that would have probably overwhelmed you in the sessions, but we've put them at the end for you to dip into, to say, oh, I'd really like some support in terms of how to, like one thing, like an elevator pitch about something that you've been leading that you would like some other people to know without getting in front of them too aggressively. So there's processes about how you might do that. So each module goes the same way, really. There's the 3 sessions, and I know when we were reviewing it, we could go through each session or each module in about 2 to 3 hours. So yeah, it's pitched at 12 hours, but it really depends whether you want to dive into it or whether you want to do what Whare was talking about earlier in terms of taking it step by step and going through it from the start to the end. So hopefully that gives you more of a understanding about how we thought about the modules, the 4 modules.
Thank you for that, Emily, and for giving that rough sort of time frame of how much time I might need to have available to engage in this program. Just a follow-up question for you, Emily. You mentioned that you provide some notes or pieces about the readings. Do you provide the readings for participants to read as well?
Yeah, we have tried to stick with readings that we can get access to. And Madeleine and her team has been amazing at getting permissions. So yes, and then in some cases we can't get those readings because they're behind paywalls, you know, they're in a journal. But we've given information about how they can be accessed. But we've tried to keep a lot of our content freely available, and we've just used been really strong on references and citations to whose work it is, so that we're, you know, not taking people's work.
Thank you for that. Whare, there's a question for you. What place does Te Ao Wairua have in these modules and the model of leadership?
I saw that and I was like, yeah, that's a pretty deep question. Hoia no. Part of the thing that we also ensured that we added into this, because you'll hear me always go on about holistic wellbeing and always how can you give to others when you have no space or time left within yourself, when you're so overwhelmed that you just physically can't give to others anymore. So we've also added Te Whare Tapawhā as one of the leadership models. It's a very simplistic model. Well, it can be used very simplistically. It can be used to do a really deep dive of knowledge. But that would be the leadership model that I would pull on, that I would say has a space and a place in Te Ao Wairua. Anō nei, and I'll say this, kei roti te reo Māori, and then I'll whakapākia, anō nei, ka ia koe te tikanga, ka whaiwhai, ka haere koe ki tēnei o ngā akoranga, e ka tērā pia ka kite ia koe, he wāhi ki reira mau, hoi anō hara I te mea ka aro noi hoki tēnā. So I was just saying that as you progress, I think that was Sam Weepers, perhaps, I'm just going through, as you progress through the course, you may see something that also enables that for you, but I'll be really honest, specifically, I didn't do that deeper dive in that area of Te Ao Wairua because we were really mindful in terms of the diversity of the cultures that will come in and use this course, that there were just really good beginner steps that we felt were appropriate and important for them. And I feel like the question, even the way that you've asked the question, that in terms of that aspect of yourself, for yourself, you may be further along than others will be as emerging leaders, and they undertake this course. Happy for you to email me, actually, because that's actually quite a big kōrero. But yeah, in all honesty, we lightly touched it in terms of wayfinding leadership. We lightly touched it again in terms of Te Whare Tapawhā, but again, it'll be you as you progress through the journey, whether you feel that it has done that enough. And I'd actually like to get a little bit of your feedback too, perhaps, and maybe in ways that
Thank you for that, Whare. We've got time for one more question before we need to close for everybody. Fia, I'm going to point it towards you, but the question is, do I need to be in a formal leadership role to benefit from this?
Absolutely not. I'm not sure about everybody else, but one of the things that I've noticed in all the different spaces that I've occupied or been part of is the talent for leadership sometimes falls through the cracks. And so I think this is designed to really look at that person who's contemplating it and doesn't have an official title or isn't a leader today. And so it's an attempt to encourage teachers to take that next step, to really look at leadership and give it a go, and to do it in a really non-threatening, not an intimidating type of way. So I think that the way we've designed it online, it gives people that privacy to really grapple with some of the ideas. Like I said earlier, it's based off of lived experiences as well. We've got a lot of empirical evidence as well to support some of those key themes and concepts that have been introduced. So there's a lot in there for that person who isn't a leader today or hasn't got the official title, but is keen to be promoted and is keen to come through. So no, it's not just for that person who has a leadership title. It's for that person who's searching and has is an emerging leader, an emergent leader. So absolutely an inclusive piece of work or body of work, looking at people of all ages and of all backgrounds who might be ready at this stage to just test the waters a little bit, stretch their thinking and their skills, and to really develop and give and serve in a different capacity, because we know that teachers serve. We know that sometimes it can be such a difficult and thankless line of work, but if you're ready to serve at a different stage in a different capacity, this might be something you're interested in.
Kia ora, Fia. Thank you for that clarification. That's all the time that we've got for questions today. I just want to say thank you to for everyone for joining us today. We've had about 600 people join this webinar today to join the Stepping into Leadership launch webinar, and we hope that everyone has found the insights shared today inspiring and insightful and helpful in embarking on your leadership journeys. As this is the first time that we'll be offering the Stepping into Leadership, your feedback is incredibly valuable to us. At the end of each module, you'll find a short survey where you can share your thoughts, what worked well and what could be improved. And we really appreciate you taking the time to complete these. Our apologies, it's taking a bit longer than expected to give everybody access due to the high demand that we've got for people to enroll in the program. The great news is that we've been assured that it will all be up and running by tomorrow morning. We will go through this chat as well, and we'll find all the questions that we haven't had an opportunity to respond to, and we will respond to them through the frequently asked questions. If by tomorrow, maybe tomorrow midday, you're still having trouble accessing the course or haven't received your email or login details, please feel free to get in touch with our support team at support@intuto.com. That that email is going to go into the chat for you, and they'll be more than happy to help you. On behalf of all our authors and the entire team behind Stepping into Leadership, we wish you all the very best as you take your next steps towards leadership. Stay connected, keep learning, and we hope to see you in the course. Ngā mihi nui, thank you again for joining us. Kua e ki runga, kua e ke raro, e rungo whakarihia, ki runga, ki tina, tina. Homie e, hui e, tai ki e.